Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Emotional Intelligence Pawdcast. I'm your host, Sandra Thompson, founder of EI Evolution, and I am super excited to take you on this incredible journey. We're going to be exploring the transformative world of emotional intelligence and empathy, guided by some truly remarkable humans and their fantastic four-legged friends. In each episode, we'll dive into inspiring and heartwarming stories about our beloved canine companions. We'll discover the unique and magical bonds we share with our dogs and uncover the profound lessons they teach us about understanding and managing our emotions. From tales of loyalty and love to moments of learning and growth, our furry friends have so much to offer when it comes to enhancing our emotional intelligence. We'll also discuss practical tips and insights on how to cultivate empathy and emotional awareness in our daily lives, inspired by the natural wisdom of our dogs. So sit back and relax, maybe even with your playful pup by your side, and join us for an enriching experience that celebrates the incredible ways dogs help us connect more deeply with ourselves and others. Welcome to the Emotional Intelligence Pawdcast. Every single one of these podcast episodes have been tremendous so far. So that's obviously no pressure, of course, on my next guest. But my next guest, this is quite dear to my heart, because in actual fact, if I hadn't have met this lady, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing now. It's really through her emotional intelligence, her compassion, her desire to do a great job that I am able to convey as much as I can to you. So without further ado, let me introduce Shefali and Ben. How are you?
Hi, Sandra. First, so thank you so much for having me, and I am great. And as you can see, Ben here is really great because he's getting a lot of treats right now.
I can't believe you've managed to get him in the shot. So for those of you that are watching, you can see Ben in the background thinking, another treat, Mum. I can see you've got a bowl. Let's be having them.
Exactly.
It's great to have you here live from New York, right?
Live from New York, exactly.
Fabulous. So, Shefali, before we talk about Ben and his story and what he means and all of the great things that you're going to share with us, tell us a little bit about you and what you do and how we met.
Absolutely. So high level, I'm an executive coach and I work with senior executives, C-suite, C-1, C-2 executives across industries, really on, I would say, leadership success and how they can have even more impact at work and how they can have more well-being in their lives. So it's really about how can they live their best life.
Great.
The leaders I work with are across industries. So they're all the way from Fortune 100 companies to startups across technology, financial services, consulting, and otherwise. And, through this journey of being a coach, is kind of really built on a foundation of, I would say, 20 years on the business side, where I spent time in strategy and corporate finance and M&A and in chief operating officer roles, mostly in financial services. And at one point around the 20-year mark, almost came to this point of, how can I help leaders succeed? Because I realized that's what I was enjoying the most. And through that journey, came into this mix of let's have at it. Let's be in this coaching space and work with leaders and on strategy, on life design. And the way you and I met, in that context is I know both of us became a part of the Emotional Intelligence program, but from Daniel Goleman,
Yeah.
and that was our, I would say, a pivotal moment for both you and me when we first met in Vienna. In that kind of really innovative, really evidence-based, science-based emotional intelligence program where you almost learn how to have impact on other Homo sapiens and how to kind of shape their thinking about how they think about themselves and others from an emotional intelligence lens. And I'm so glad we got to meet through that.
So what Shefali hasn't mentioned to you, and thank you very much for that explanation, is that she was my coach
So Shefali, along with a number of others, so it's her fault. So
It's not my fault.
and so Shefali had a number of us in our cohort, and she taught us how to coach because she coached us, and it was really that, I think, for me, was one of the most ingenious ways of designing it, because when you're receiving coaching and then when you practice coaching, you see both sides. And it was incredibly powerful to receive your expertise and to pick up on some of the things you were doing, and then be able to put your own mark on it, but then be able to do it. It's great to see you. It really is.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's hear a bit now about Ben, who's lurking in the background. He's got his eyes on the prize just there. For those of you that are watching us on YouTube, tell us his background story. Where did he come from? How long have you had him? What breed is he?
Yeah, absolutely. So he's a white boxer, and he just turned 5 yesterday. So he's a big boy now.
Happy birthday.
And his backstory is that he's a rescue. He's a COVID rescue. So rescued him in 2020 and he was very well loved in the first year of his life. But the young
Okay.
lady who had him had to move in with her parents, and therefore had to, her parents were not willing to take on Ben. And so she worked really, really hard to find a lovely rescue organization called the Boxer Rescue of New York,
Oh,
and
wow.
then kind of found him. And that's how, we found him. And he traveled through many, many states. He had many foster families as he, came from a state in the south of the US, and kind of moved here with us. And yeah, that's his backstory, and some fun facts about him. As you can see, he is that he has two different color eyes. I don't know if you know
Yes.
which he sees equally well from them. And then another fun fact is that in TikTok, as we all do interesting different things, I decided to get on TikTok with Ben. And so he has a handle called White Boxer Ben,
White box
and
Ben, yeah.
he's enlisted 25,000 followers on that. So through his antics, and then of course I don't do that anymore, but he still has his 25,000 followers who keep messaging now and then saying, how is Ben doing?
Wow. So Ben is a TikTok star with 25,000 followers. That's
There he
fantastic.
is. Yeah, there you
And
go.
so with his eyes then, why has he got two different color eyes? Do you
It's
know the
just a
reason for
genetic,
that?
yeah, it's just a genetic disposition. It doesn't change his vision.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And it's probably just something that, a certain percent of dogs across breeds have.
Yeah, yeah, incredible. So I've seen a small handful of dogs that have different color eyes, and there's quite a famous pop star in the UK called David Bowie. Now he had two different colored eyes, but he had an illness that caused his other eye. And whenever I see that, the first thing I think of is David Bowie and
Yeah.
how incredibly focusing it is for when you meet these dogs with. And actually, I think I might have got one cat that has the same condition, but it just adds to their character, right, and their presence.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, fantastic.
absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah, he's 5. He was a rescue dog, and he travelled quite a way then to be with you. How is it different for him where you live now? Is it just the same, or is it just a different? Are there more houses? What is it? A different environment completely for him?
Yeah, so we live in the suburbs just outside New York City. And,
Mhm.
so he has a really nice big yard. He has, it's like individual homes. A lot of people who have dogs, in our community, and very people who love dogs.
Yeah.
And his experience of life, I would say right now, is around, when he goes for at least a couple of hours of walks, once in the morning,
Yeah.
once in the evening with Sam
Yeah.
and I. He meets all of his buddies who have the same schedule of walks as him. During the walk, he
Yeah.
hunts down he enjoys watching the squirrels and the rabbits and all of that. And he, I would say he has a, I would say just from his facial expressions and his kind of indications, he seems really comfortable and happy. He has the same
Yeah.
postman who comes to our letterbox every day. He can bark at around now, expected any time. And
We'll be
the
ready for that.
FedEx and the Amazon, like all of the similar experiences. So, and he has neighbors who really love him and kind of like to hang out with him. So
Yeah.
he's really settled in. He's been with us 4 years now. He's really
Yeah.
settled in.
No, that's great.
And and as you can see, the reason I'm seated this way, for those of you who are watching the YouTube in this weird angle, is because this is his favorite place to sit, and this is the only place I could get him to
So
stay with
this
me for a
Yeah,
while.
no, for sure.
Yeah.
And the reason why I mention about him moving location, I had a friend of mine who has a border collie where the dog was brought up on a farm, and that meant that, I mean, she has a house and big garden and everything else, but just being in the farm surrounded by other livestock did take a bit of an adjustment for that particular animal, because it just wasn't what they were used to. But you've had him for 4 years. He's kind of settling down. He's sorting the postman out. It's all good. So let's talk about emotional intelligence now and some particular competencies.
Yeah.
Given what you know and your experience of EI, which one would you like to pick, and what have you got to share for the guys that are listening in today?
Absolutely. As I think about kind of the emotional intelligence competencies right now, I think one with the really rapidly changing world that we live in, the one that comes to mind is adaptability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the the it seems that pets seem to get on with it. Once they know that they've got their bed, once they've got the routine of when they're going to eat, when they know that you're there, they can deal with change far faster, depending on the breed, though, because apparently border
Yep.
collies are a little bit more fussy. But is there anything that Ben has done to bring that competency to life, do you think?
Like you said, one thing that I know almost all of your guests probably would have mentioned, right, is that with dogs, what we experience is such intense living in the moment
Mm,
and such intense ability to pivot to the next moment without the baggage of the previous moment.
yeah,
And I find that from if one thing I'm constantly learning from Ben, for myself, and therefore even in the work that I do with the leaders I work with, is around that, is that can you move to kind of day one mindset as you move on
yeah.
to the next moment and fully receive what all of the scenarios, all of the inputs you're getting in that new moment, and act accordingly.
Mm,
Versus thinking about what was the piece in the past and how that might lock you in. So I would say definitely that extreme living in the moment, and being very focused on all inputs is something that I have learned from Ben for sure.
so let's just explore that for a second then. So all inputs. So I think this is acute ability to smell. Is that what we're talking about? So the sight, the sound, the incredible receptors they have to be able to smell things that we don't even pick up on. People's body language, everything seemed to be amplified for a dog. Would you say that that's true?
I would say that's true, for because obviously their senses and okay, he's
He's gone.
he's done. Their senses are, much heightened from, than ours as Homo
Mm,
sapiens. So absolutely, I would say, but it's also outside of the senses and the focus of the senses, the energy focus, in
mm,
terms of without the pure focus of their mental energy on that moment and what's going to happen. So for example, right now, he knew that his treats are not as forthcoming as he wanted, and he's now immediately in the next moment, but he's not thinking about, oh, that spot was better, why wasn't that
yeah.
happening, and why can't I make that happen again. He's just literally now in a new spot, and he's like, let me use all of the cognitive faculties I have to
Mm,
get him that treat in that spot. And so I find that is really, one of the things of kind of full curiosity, outside of the
Mm.
senses as well, and full energy and attention. Is that something you experience as well, Sandra, with your
Yeah,
doggy?
I think so. I think certainly when I've shared a space with a dog, they they just seem to have kind of street smarts. They're not kind of bothered by all the other stuff that's going on. They just get on with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
be more dog, because they don't get hung up on stuff. They're just, this is what I want. Just going to get it. Not getting it,
Yep.
do something else. So
Yep.
it seems simplistic and straightforward.
Yep.
So perhaps there's a lesson in there for all of us to just think, okay, deal with this. We don't need to be carrying any of these other thoughts. We don't necessarily need them. As you taught me once, how true is it? That was one of the greatest questions you ever asked me. How true is it that this is da 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 da? And all my imagination, the stories that I created for myself, evaporated, and I was back in the moment. Maybe that's the
Yep.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I love how you framed that.
Well, hello, you taught me, so that's down to you. Let's move on to another competency. What was the next one you might pick?
So from a dog perspective, Sandra,
Mm.
or in
Mm.
general.
Yeah, perhaps one that we could learn from dog behavior, an emotional intelligence competency.
So I'm going to jump to, we talked about kind of internally, right, how they operate, but I would say maybe the next one to jump to is influence.
Okay.
In terms of how they interact with the world, and how they are constantly, clearly they don't have any direct access to resources. Ben
Yeah.
can't open the fridge and get his food himself. He can't buy himself toys.
Could you
He can't take
imagine?
himself for a walk, right? He has like
Yeah.
absolutely no resources that he can access directly, and he can only
Sure.
work through others. And I
Yeah.
find that so interesting that all he can do is work through others, and how he uses his influence, his ability to connect, his ability to build deep relationships without, obviously, he doesn't have the intentionality, he just does it automatically. His
Mm.
ability to try different strategies,
Yeah.
kind of almost understanding what we as individuals, others want in terms of what's my fuel, what's my
Mm.
husband's fuel, what's other people's fuel. Tap into that and then give that so that he can get what he wants. And that can be all the way from, just staying in the moment and, kind of not giving up, all the way to giving up, stepping away, coming back and trying another way, all the way to persuasion by just looking adoringly, to blackmail by, tugging on you. And it's literally, they can try a sequence of strategies
Yeah.
until they can get to the outcome they want.
Yeah.
And so that I find is so interesting. And in many ways, it teaches you as, as leaders, as executives, even in organizations, kind of knowing that if all you could do is work through others, how would
Mm.
you get to those collective outcomes, by really tapping into, kind of bringing everyone together.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's it. And so I've done a little bit of reading about the evolution of dogs in our lives, and the point that you make is spot on, because ultimately, of all the species we've ever hung around with, it's the dog that is our companion, and they do have this kind of persistence, this desire to, for their survival, they do need to work us out. He's been so good. Look at him. He's like laser focused. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, Ben is like, this is the best day ever. What is podcast? Um, so, so, so the point then really is, over the thousands of years, they've tried very many different approaches. Then they've kind of probably learned the one that's been effective, and they keep doing that until that doesn't work. And then they're not worried about it. They just get on with whatever the next approach might be. So I think, is there
Yep.
something in there about resilience and about curiosity and grit and determination to just keep trying? because what's there to lose? Nothing. I've just got to, I need to be with this human. So let's just crack on. Does any of that resonate?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. You're right. And it is all of that combination of, to your point around evolution, their evolution, but what we can learn from them is all of that, right? It is the resilience, this being unfazed,
Mm,
continuously trying everything, the grit around that, the even the adaptability around if it doesn't work out after he tries all the strategies,
yeah.
he's not going to sit and sulk for an
No.
extended period of time. There's a recovery, and he's going to move on to, okay, let's move on with life and
Yeah.
look at what's the next moment. So you're right. I mean, as we even talk about this, I just think about all of these amazing things that we get the privilege of learning from our dogs, if we or even watching other people's dogs.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And watching other people's interaction with their dogs, because I've certainly, when my parents retired and moved down to the south coast, and they always had a dog with them, watching how they were with their dog and how they were with other dogs and how the dogs were with each other. It's quite a heady mix of observing how people are naturally and how confident they were, or how nervous they might be, or how a kind of reactive the dog might be. Yeah, no, I think they're great. They're great points. So, is there another competency that you want to kind of highlight? We're the kind of diehard. We've got our 12 competencies, and we're kind of thinking about the textbook and bringing a couple into life. Is there another you'd like to share, Shefali?
Maybe I'll talk about an element of, an element of the kind of self-management piece, which is the positive outlook,
Yeah.
and in what drives positive outlook, and how
Mm,
dogs bring that to the table, and that's really savoring. Right. I know,
yeah.
when you work with people and, when I work with people, we are constantly talking about how important it is to intentionally train the brain around positive outlook, because it really balances and creates more objectivity in your thinking. Because, as Homo sapiens, we are naturally wired to have a kind of a more a negative or a risk, kind of processing perspective.
Yeah.
And what I learned from Ben is the ability to fully and intensely savor whatever is happening, and so when he sees that squirrel in the backyard that he wants to chase after, or when he goes for a walk, or when he gets his food at a certain point in time, or the treats he just had, because of that being present in the moment, but also he receives that with a real very strong positivity orientation and an intense kind of appreciation, when you come back
Yeah.
home, even if you went away for 1 minute, the kind of intense appreciation that he builds around that. If we looked at kind of how that can be with us as, as people and as leaders, it's or entrepreneurs, it's really around that positive outlook built through savoring of whatever it is
Mm,
that we intensely appreciate, whether it's, through gratitude practices or just savoring practices otherwise, how that could impact our ability to build those positive kind of outlook, stronger positive outlook neural pathways, and how that could and then impact our ability to see things clearly, but also
mm,
our ability to kind of experience more well-being.
yeah.
So, that's such a beautiful connection that starts from just that savoring that moment and appreciating it fully.
So, if I've heard you correctly, this is very much about the learning for us for humans is, you know immersing ourselves in the joy or the positivity, the brilliant result that we've got, so that we can really feel it throughout our whole body, not to skip it and move on to the next thing straight away, but to really kind of feel the vibration of it so that we can fully know it's happened, and we can, to your point around neural pathways, the more often we can properly sit in that, the more positivity that we'll bring to ourselves, which is the well-being. Very often we find, don't we, that we do something really well, we might be, yeah, that's great, and then we move on to the next thing. We haven't given
Yep.
it the opportunity to give us all of the energy that we could be taking on. I think that's what I'm hearing. That's part of what you're saying, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And and all of those pieces of, as you said, kind of really metabolizing, if you imagine from a physiology perspective, how you could appreciate something and then kind of digest it and metabolize it and kind of it goes into your
Mm,
DNA. If you can truly sit with the positive in aspects in that, as silly sometimes to some folks it may sound, how that can, fundamentally change how we are perceiving the world in that moment, and how
mm,
it's balancing, giving us more perspective, more emotional balance from that positive outlook orientation. There's so much research around this, in terms of kind of the savoring and the gratitude practices and how that contributes to well-being. And of course, we know how well-being contributes to just being ability to succeed in the world and, kind of take stock and pivot well and have positive impact on others.
mm. So I remember from the training that I had about vibration. I think from memory, there's a book called, is it Altered Traits,
Altered,
Altered States?
yep,
Yeah, that's
altered
right, which is
traits.
all about the frequency of our brain and how these positive things can actually fundamentally change how our brain is. The second point then quickly is really around when we see so much positivity in the dog, it makes us smile. So there's that whole emotional contagion of, I mean, even when I see a dog just wagging its tail, I smile. But when you are received by a dog, when you come back to the house, what, all the perhaps tiredness or anger or frustration or whatever just evaporates. What's all that about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, like you said, it's that emotional contagion. And, as we learned, and I know the science around mirror neurons is still early science. And, there's a lot more to be kind of looked at from a research perspective. But just that idea of how looking at someone else's emotions and, you experiencing me experiencing you activates mirror neurons in your brain. And if I am signaling warmth and connection and joy, that will automatically, it's kind of be contagious and activate that experience in you. It's such a interesting concept, and it's so true if you think about it from, obviously, as you said, from dogs perspective, how we feel that deep connection. It doesn't have to be our dog. We don't have to prior love it, right? It just kind of meeting any dog and how they approach us and how that makes us feel. And you kind of put that in, in all of the great work that you do, right, around kind of employee experience and customer experience, and the work that I do around kind of even stakeholder management, for leaders. It's around whatever you are thinking and whatever you are signaling is actually being received by the other brain without you having to even say it. And so being
Mm,
intentional about that
yeah,
can get us so much ROI in that, because we also then get it back. So it becomes like the cycle.
yeah, absolutely, for sure. The butterfly effect, from what I remember.
Yeah.
Shefali, it's been great to speak to you. As far as a summary of what it's like to have a dog, what a dog brings to your home and wider society, what have you got for us?
Oh, I love that question. For me, for, I would say, society role model for us to learn so much from. In some ways, if we paid attention, and for me specifically, just so much joy, so much energy, such as kind of dopamine hit. Obviously we get the serotonin connection, and I would just say just kind of completes, for me personally, the life that we are living, and just kind of elevates it one more level.
Yeah, for sure. I forgot about the chemicals, of course. There's a bunch of science, isn't there, where I think it's the oxytocin in the owner is matched by the oxytocin of the dog. They've done studies to show how that kind of equalizes.
Yep.
So again, all the positive love hormones that feel good for us come from having these relationships. Is there anything you'd like to finally leave our listeners with? Ben's done a runner because you've stopped dishing out the
Yes.
treats, so there's
Yeah,
nothing to
he
do
ate
there.
all of them.
Oh, he's eaten all of them. That's fantastic. Nice one, Ben. Any final words of wisdom? Any final comments, Shafali, before we close up here?
um, so I would just say that the work that, you and I both do in the context of emotional intelligence, and for all of your listeners who are dog lovers or just dog curious, kind of really paying attention to that. And, one method that I know you and I both know around how do you bring emotional intelligence into your day-to-day life in that way is, one thing that I find for my people really enjoy is something that I've simplified in what we already know. So it's not new, but I call it kind of more, MORE, and it's just kind of the more method, which is basically, if you're thinking about situations, first think about me, what's happening with me, right? Think about other, the ecosystem, what's happening with the other. And then think about what do I need to reset in me? What do I need to balance? What do I need to neutralize to get myself to optimal state? And then go and engage in that world intentionally. And so it's kind of like, MORE is a very simple way to remember, or like a formula to remember emotional intelligence in that quadrants, and say, how do I activate this in my life to create more well-being, to interact better, to have more impact, and to just start to intentionally live a better life.
Okay, so more, that's me, others. The R is reset.
The R is reset. So kind of reset or reframe myself.
Reset, reframe, and reset.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
E.
And then engage. In the world.
Great.
Yeah.
Loving that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's been great to see you. It's been great to see Ben on form as well. Thank you so much, Shefali, honestly, and have a really fabulous rest of your day. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Sandra. I'm so glad that we got to do this and appreciate it. And you're doing amazing work.
Back at you. See you soon.
See ya.
So that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in. If we've not connected already, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there most days. You'll find me under CXEI Sandra. And also, if you want to find out a bit more about my work, then you can pop along to my website, www.eievolution.com. One final thing, and in the spirit of customer experience and feedback, I wonder if you might consider leaving a review on Spotify. I'll leave that one with you. So until the next time, be well and be pawsome. Ta-ra!